Hi everyone, this is Amy from the Helms Academy, and today we're talking about types of literature. By the end of this video, you'll be able to identify the different types of literature that may appear on the GED or HiSET test, and you'll also have a toolkit full of strategies that you can use while reading and analyzing these different types of literature. Let's get started. One type of literature that you might see is the short story. These are designed to entertain you, and they might be made up or they might be true. We call the made-up stories fiction and the true stories nonfiction. But either way, their purpose remains the same. On this screen, you'll see some key vocabulary in blue. I'd like to talk about these because these are words that you might see in the test questions. First, the characters in a story are the people or animals or the other beings that act in that story. Anything or anyone that has an acting role in the story is a character, and that could include, in a fiction story, plants or trees or animals that may talk. The setting is the time and place of the story. Where did it happen? When did it happen? The plot is what happens in the story. There are three major parts to a plot that I'd like to highlight today. You can think of a story like a mountain. First, you go up one side of the mountain. This is the rising action. It's preparing the reader to understand what's happening in the story, who the characters are, and it eventually all leads to the major event, which is the climax. Think the climax is the top point of the mountain. This is the turning point in the story. It's a major event, and it points to what the whole story is about. After that, we see the falling action, which brings the story to the end. The falling action is like the cleanup and closure to make sure that the story ends well. Lastly, the theme is the lesson that we learn. It's like a moral of a story. It's the central message inside of the story. So ask yourself, what can I learn from this story? That's the theme. Now, in reading a short story, we want to make sure you read through the whole thing first, from beginning to end. It's important to know everything that happens in the story so you can get a good overview of it before you begin answering all the questions. While you're reading, I'd encourage you to write down any of the characters' names or details about the setting or any major events that you see along the way. And what this will do is help you create a summary. It'll help you keep track of what happened in the story in a short form so that when you finish the reading, you'll have a quick reference guide. Another thing you should do is at the end of the reading, immediately ask yourself about the theme. What's the lesson that can be learned from this story? Once you've done these things, you've really set yourself up for success because it will be easy to go back and scan the story for additional details or information asked in the questions. So if you do the preliminary work first, you'll be able to save some time on your test later. A second type of literature that you might see on the GED or HiSET test is a nonfiction informational text. These texts offer true information about a specific topic, and they're designed to inform the reader and give facts. They're generally straightforward, very clearly organized, and not particularly entertaining. Because of their clear organization, they're usually pretty easy to navigate. Some examples of these kinds of texts might be information about a specific event or a procedure, how to do something. It might be information about a people group or a language. When you're reading a nonfiction informational text, I encourage you to start by skimming the text rather than reading the whole thing through. As we all know, taking the GED or HiSET test, there is a time limit, and so it's best to find strategies that will best use the time that you have. Skimming allows you to look over the whole text from beginning to end, but doing so quickly. You won't catch every word, but you will pick out some keywords and ideas throughout. One trick to skimming is to pause long enough to read the first sentence of each paragraph, which is also usually known as the topic sentence. Many times, this sentence will tell the reader what the paragraph is about. And these texts are usually longer than maybe a short story or a poem. So it is better to go through and skim the text first so you can get through the material a bit quicker. And knowing those topic sentences will give you an idea for the structure of the reading. Once you skimmed through, I want you to think about those topic sentences. What are all the paragraphs about, and how did the author organize this information? Was it organized by topic or by order of events? Take a look through and decide how the reading is organized, and this will help you to navigate it when you're answering the questions. A third type of literature that you might see on the GED or HiSET is nonfiction historical. You can identify this type because it will be focused on a specific time period or historical event. It's generally organized in chronological order, meaning that it progresses over time. The purpose of a text like this is to capture a historical reality and relate that experience to the reader. When reading a nonfiction historical text, you should read through the whole text first. Pay attention to any dates and time, since it's likely organized by these measures. And if you're able to take notes, I encourage you to take notes about the events and dates and times as you read about them. Look for important historical figures as well, people's names, their titles, and the names of the people groups involved as well. Finally, it's very likely that you will see a piece of poetry on the GED or HiSET test. There are many different types of poetry, but the poems on the GED are generally short, just a couple of stanzas. Poetry can be difficult because it uses figurative language, which forces you to interpret what the words mean rather than just what they say. It won't take you long to read a poem, so you should definitely read the poem in its entirety 1 or 2 times through. However, the time will be spent more on focusing on the meaning behind the poem. Here are a few tips for reading poetry. Read the poem through 1 to 2 times, but be sure to also read the title, as it will likely give you some clues to what the poem is about. Pay attention also to the beginning, as the beginning of the poem often indicates that central focus of the poem. Reading poetry is really all about understanding and determining the meaning behind the poem. For example, let's think about if a poem compares a day in someone's life to a windstorm. It doesn't necessarily mean that a windstorm actually happened that day, but more likely that comparison will mean that the day was very chaotic in the same way that a windstorm is chaotic. So pay attention to the comparisons that are made and try to determine what similarities they might have. One last note about reading strategies, and this really applies to all types of reading that you might do. No matter what kind of reading it is, you have to focus. If you aren't paying attention to what you're reading, you're going to miss some really important information and you're going to waste valuable time. Make the most of your reading experience and your HiSET and GED testing experience by staying focused. If you find that your eyes are getting buzzy and need a break, give them a short break by staring at something 20 feet away for about 20 seconds. Then come back ready to focus. Good luck with your reading, and thank you for watching. Don't forget to check out the Helms Academy at helmsacademy.org.